Good morning. It's 9:30, and welcome to session W20, Pecha Kucha, presenting 20 slides for 20 seconds each. You guys should all know the ropes by now. Silence your phones, please, so you won't interrupt the speaker or the folks around you. And everybody has the app downloaded to be able to do the evaluation. Does anybody not and maybe need some help with it? We're all good? Okay. So welcome again, and I wanted to introduce Craig Plain. Craig Plain, PhD, has over 20 years experience in process improvement and training. As a matter of fact, he started his training career when he was in 4th grade, helping out some students with teaching some projects for their classmates. He did graduate from college, earned his commission in the Air Force, where several of his training programs were adopted throughout the service. And this included a unique class that combined teaching with the tenets of process improvement. Craig has done Master Black Belt. He's an author, an award-winning speaker, and an amateur cartoonist. And hopefully some of you caught his After 5 session on Monday on cartoons and enjoyed that session. He's facilitated events at all levels, from enterprise-wide transformation to shop floor Kaizens. He's done over 200 improvement events for General Electric, the U.S. Air Force, the U.S. Navy, and other organizations. So Craig's been involved in training, development, and delivery at several Fortune 100 companies, the military, universities. He's presented at conferences for International Society for Process Improvement, Academy of Human Research Development, and the American Association for Adult and Continuing Education. Please help me welcome Craig Plain. Thank you.
Thank you.
I did want to mention also, the session is being recorded, and I know we have a large crowd. We would prefer that you come up to the mic, but Craig will kindly repeat questions if we can't get it.
Yeah, if you can't make it up to the mic, I'll just repeat the question, so they make sure they capture it. So, well, thank you so much for being here on a beautiful Seattle day. I'm just so pleased that you're doing this. How many of you have any idea what you're in for? How many of you know what a Pecha Kucha is? Just a few, okay. All right. Look over there, real proud. Yes, I know. Yes. All right. Okay, bit of trivia question for you. Anyone recognize the tie? From what? Where is it from? How I Met Your Mother. This is the tie that Barney had to wear every day for a year after he lost a bet. This is what happens when you're not specific to your children about Christmas presents. So that's my bad. Today, we're going to talk about what a Pecha Kucha is and its format. You hopefully have some idea from the title. We're going to understand how it might be used in the context of quality and change management and transformation. We're going to appreciate some of the benefits and the weaknesses, the pros and cons. Going to help provide some lessons learned, some best practices for it. And I'm going to I'm going to kind of guide you through some development and delivery practices for this. When I first started putting this together, my idea was I started doing Pecha Kuchas a couple of years ago at ASQ conference. I was presenting there on a training program, and they had this PK challenge. And then they also had a PK lunch. And so talking with the selection committee there, they said, hey, you talk really fast. Why don't you come and do some of these things? I'm like, okay, I've never heard of this format before. So I've got one put together that I was going to do as a sample, and then the rest of the time I was just going to kind of ramble on the standard PowerPoint slides. And then I realized, why don't I just do the entire thing in Pecha Kucha format? So that's what we're going to do. I've got 5 sections. They're all in Pecha Kucha format. I'm going to pause between each section, take questions, and talk a little bit more. And that's the way it's going to put together. So when I came up with this idea, I met the woman that runs the Pecha Kucha nights here in Seattle. I actually work with her, and I didn't realize it. We met for coffee, and I told her this grand idea, and she just kind of looked at me like, you are crazy. So we'll see how it works out. So. Oh, where I started. So what is it? So it is, just as it says, it's 20 images at 20 seconds. So PowerPoint format is the preferred method because you can transition the slides. So altogether, it comes out to 6 minutes and 40 seconds for a Pecha Kucha format. Now, there are some variations, and we're going to talk a little bit about those later on. How do you pronounce it? Well, I pronounce it Pecha Kucha or Pecha Kucha. The Japanese, it is Japanese for chit-chat, and there are some that master the Japanese tongue a little bit better, and they're able to say it in like 3 syllables, Pichka or Pichaka, or you can just shorten it to PK. The woman who runs the organization here is actually from Portugal, and she says it in the most lovely sing-song, Pichaka way, but I can't do it. So again, 5 sections. This section we're going to do an introduction. The second section I'm going to show you my sample PK. It is a history of quality, so it's quite applicable here. Then I'm going to do a section on building a PK. We're going to look at some variations and some studies about it, and then lastly, lessons and best practices, and I'm already behind. So a little bit about me. There's a picture of me presenting one of my Pecha Kuchas. Worked in the Air Force. My award-winning speaking is winning at a Toastmasters conference. Also, I have to tell you, I'm not an official representative of the PK organization. When I reached out to them for information, they said make sure to tell them that. So, how did this all start? Who started this? Well, it started with a group in Japan, an architect group, the KDA group. Astrid Klein and Mark Ditham put this together. They found out that if you give architects a microphone, they talk forever. So they came up with this format. And so why to do this? Well, if you look at the works of Deming, 2 of Deming's 14 points are education. If you look at the work of Cotter talks about communications. So this is another tool, another format you can use to help spread the word. And when you see some of the variations, I'll show you how it might be applicable in some different settings. So if you're interested in more in doing these, now this started, they started PK nights in 2004. They had a few in Europe. Now in 2016, they've got over 900 global of them. People at work use them. We actually use them at Amazon, a variation of it. I'll talk a little bit more about that later on. So how is this done? How is a PK night done? Well, typically it's 8 to 14 presenters, depending on it. They may have a common theme, so it might be, a blast from the past or, space travel. So it runs about an hour, hour and a half. They tend to be in the art or creative or academic fields. So the pros to all this is, well, it's very concentrated, it's concise, it forces you to be concise. You try to fit in a topic in 20 slides in 20 seconds, you really winnow out the chaff. You really have to focus down on what you want. And this is kind of, it kind of alludes to Parkinson's law, where, work expands to fill the time available. If you give somebody an hour to speak, they will fill up that hour. Okay? Just like I was planning on doing with rambling on and whatnot. So by limiting to 20 slides, 20 seconds, it forces you to focus on the message, on the key points. Another interesting point that came up when I was talking with Anna, the head here in Seattle, was she mentioned it's a very democratic presentation method. If you have somebody who's comfortable speaking in front of a group, they can get up and ramble on for hours and hours and hours, and they seem eloquent and everything like that. And then you get somebody else who has an important message but doesn't feel comfortable talking in front of a group. This format kind of equalizes that out. It levelizes the playing field. Practice, it's actually easier to practice a Pecha Kucha because you've got 20 slides in 20 seconds. So you've got 6 minutes and 40 seconds that you can do it. So you can run through it relatively quickly. You can do it, I tend to do it while walking the dog, or you're driving in the car. So there's a lot of ability to keep practicing. PK relies heavily on graphics, and you're going to see in my sample, I didn't realize that on some of my first ones, but graphics tend to have a greater visual stimulation. They have higher retention, and then it also frees you up that you can be a little bit more liberal with your speech, and if you're off a little bit, it doesn't matter. The cons are that it's a difficult format. It's a new format. People aren't used to it. So, and it's very time consuming. There's the old saying that, it takes 3 days to write a 10-minute speech. So it does take quite a bit of time, and it can be very hard to put together if you're looking on the PK meter. And I have to be honest, the only reason I did this slide is I wanted to see if I could make a slide animation rotate like that in PowerPoint. But it is difficult. It does take time, especially the practice. You can do it shorter, but it does take a lot. Also, it's daunting. A lot of people, feel like they're walking up this, dark and dreary staircase. It's the unknown, and as you all know in change management, people fear the unknown. So this format is difficult. I also use a slide to illustrate the fact that you can use metaphors in your graphics, which is always a good example to do. Also, one of the cons is that you're not going to get a lot of depth. You're not going to teach a black belt class in Pecha Kucha format. It's good for giving you a wide exposure to ideas to kind of get some key messages out. It's not good for depth. You really can't get into long level discussions with it, so don't expect to do so. Finding an event can actually be difficult. Like I said, there's about 900, it's probably grown since then, events around the world now, or cities around the world that host PK nights. Unfortunately, they're not all regularly scheduled. They may list them, but I don't think Seattle's had one in a couple months now. So if you want to do one with the city, it may be difficult. If you want to organize one yourself, it may be difficult. This is me after putting one together. It may not help that I had 2 pints of Guinness there. No, that wasn't it. I find these personally exhausting. I love doing this. I'm energized right now. I am on my 3rd cup of coffee. But they are draining for a lot of people because you do have this pace to keep up. So that's actually the first section already done. 6 minutes, 40 seconds. Time flies, right? Questions, comments, concerns. Has anyone ever done a PK? Yeah? Did you do it for work, or did you do it at a PK night or PhD class? Yeah, gotta love those PhD classes, the goofy stuff you do in there. All right. Has anyone seen one besides this? Where did you see it? Okay, cool. That's an Ignite talk, and we're actually going to talk about that. Who else saw one? Oh, you saw a hand over there? Where'd you see? Oh, okay. I actually did one for a company, a consulting company. I actually did an A3 walkthrough in a Pecha Kucha format. That's how come I put the scope and depth slide up there. I realized, I thought it was going to be brilliant. I thought I was going to be able to walk through the 8 steps of the A3 and kind of touch on each one, because that's 16 slides, so 2 to introduce, 2 to wrap up, 2 slides per step. It was just going to be great. Just went over everybody's head. They didn't get it. So, anyways. Okay. A bit of context. I'm going to give you my sample PK, my history of quality. Years and years, I was talking to Belinda this. Years and years and years ago, I was living in Milwaukee, Wisconsin. I'm originally from Wisconsin. And Milwaukee's home, headquarters of ASQ. And so they put out a call for proposals to come present at headquarters. They had a lot of staff there that never worked in the quality field, so they're looking for people to come in and talk about various things. And one of the topics was history of quality. And I'm like, I'm kind of a history geek. So I put together a presentation, went down, gave it, and really liked it and got some good feedback. And so over the years, I've kept it and refined it and given it different conferences and discussions and talks like that. And then about 5 years ago when I went to the ISP conference and they were asking for a PK thing, I said, oh, it'd be great to do this history of quality thing. So this is how this all evolved. And this was one of my first ones, and I had this con man mentality, the fast-talking grifter type concept. So I'm going to get down here because I do walk around a lot on this. And here we go. Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, gifted animals of all ages, my name is Craig Plain, but most folks call me Doc, and I'm pleased as punch to be here to guide you on a history of quality. We're going to start from prehistoric times through the Industrial Revolution to modern times, highlighting the people, concepts, and theories that bring us here today at the ASQ conference. In prehistoric times, man has always been looking to improve themselves, whether it's standardizing units of measurement, though not really smart to do it off of a leader's limb length, standardizing coinage, which allows for commerce and barter, but really quality as itself kind of came into highlight in the Middle Ages with the creation of guilds. Now we're going to focus mainly on the United States, that's because that's what I'm familiar with, and to realize that before the Industrial Revolution, you have to realize there are some major differences between northern and southern states. Pay attention to the rivers, that comes important later. 1730, Virginia, just an example of quality. Virginia passes a tobacco inspection law. Their tobacco becomes so valuable, their inspection notes become used as currency. Maryland's got to pass a similar law to catch up. 1700s, England starts the Industrial Revolution. Realize there's 4 prerequisites for factory production. You got to have the machines, you have to have something to power it, you have to have those interchangeable parts to fix those machines, and you have to have some type of continuous process or assembly line. The United States, wanting to capture that Industrial Revolution, begin to look out. We actually resort to industrial espionage. Samuel Slater, apprentices in England as a teenager, comes to the United States under an assumed name as 21, starts up a textile factory. Francis Cabot Lowell goes to England under health circumstances, memorizes machine layouts, brings them back. Those small rivers in the north, they provide the power, which is why you see more machinery in the north rather than the south. Interchangeable parts, Eli Whitney, better known for the cotton mill, takes a government contract in 1798 to produce 10,000 muskets. He's supposed to do them at 28 months. At 24 months, he hasn't produced a single musket. Instead, he produces jigs, standardized parts. Eventually, he overruns the contract, overruns the cost, go figure, government contract, right? Still makes money to establish Whitneyville. The assembly line, most commonly referred to Henry Ford, which we'll talk about a little bit later on, actually starts with Oliver Evans. He creates a flour mill. You dump wheat in one end, untouched by human hand, flour comes out the other hand. Also, we see the development of a management system known as the Waltham system, where we see non-technical people becoming to take leadership roles in organizations. Now, besides the production, you have to have the markets. So here you can see a map of New York with the Erie Canal, how that opened up markets. We also see advertising, this being my favorite, Walcott's Instant Pain Annihilator. I wish I had some of that right now. And then also the Civil War brought about standardized clothing as they measured Union soldiers, so we see off-the-rack clothing. Also laying the foundation, Adam Smith, The Invisible Hands. Carl Friedrich Gauss, trying to determine the diameter of the moon, comes up with a central limit theory and bell curves, important to Six Sigma. Frank and Lilith Gilbreth, cheaper by the dozen, time and motion studies. And Frederick Taylor brings forth scientific management and is considered the world's first business consultant. The assembly line, most notable with Henry Ford. He supposedly gets the idea touring a Swift meat processing plant. He sees a whole pig going one end, sausage, bacon, and ham coming out the other. Says, why can't we do that in reverse? Starts the assembly line, doubles wages at $5 a day, cuts days from 9 to 8 hours because it's easier to schedule 3 shifts, and time and production drop. Statistics come into play in 1902. Guinness Brewery, Guinness, hires William Gossett, which is unusual. He's not a chemist. He is a statistician. They're having trouble with batch samples, so he develops a test to test between batches, the t-test. He wants to publish it. Guinness doesn't want him to do it, so he now uses the student name Student. So that's how we have Student's t-test. Statistics continue to blossom under Walter Schruhout working out the Hawthorne plant. He's the guy that came up with statistical process control, the plan, do, check, act cycle. His statistical methods book is still considered required reading in a lot of programs. Duran and Deming, Duran is, I guess, the combination of the two, right? Work for him there, and they become important later on. His work lays the foundation for some of the great work we saw in World War II. Statistical sampling allows for greater acceptance and production. We also see here during World War II, women entering the workforce. They had not been in this type of environment before, so job aids, job standards become the de rigueur, which actually lay the foundation for ISO 9000. The father of modern quality, yes, it is General MacArthur. He's the governor of Japan after World War II. He wants more radios to get propaganda out, but the radio manufacturing in Japan sucks at the time. So they bring in some smart folks from MIT and AT&T Bell who adopt the slogan of the Newport News shipyard to start producing better radios. They bring in a friend of theirs, Dr. Deming. Deming worked for Shewhart. Deming is a brilliant statistician in his own mind, but more than that, he is the master of the soundbite in communications. He comes up with the 14 points, the 7 deadly diseases. Japan adopts his philosophies, becomes an economic superpower. Finally, in 1980, NBC provides an NBC white paper. He becomes recognized in the United States. Dr. Duran also worked over in Japan, helping it. Also a very prolific writer. His quality handbook is a must-read situation. He is also responsible for really kind of bringing the Pareto principle into the quality circles, and he also has an award named after him, though they really should have hired somebody better to do the engraving on that metal. Some more gurus. Ishikawa, a Japanese naval officer after the war, begins doing quality work, comes up with the Ishikawa diagram, the fishbone diagram. Taguchi comes up with Taguchi methods, sort of controversial statistical methods. Cosby, quality is free. Baldrige, working under Reagan, Commerce Secretary, dies in a rodeo accident. The Baldrige Award is named after him. Who dies in a rodeo accident? As a cabinet secretary. Six Sigma comes about, Motorola, they want more granularity in their process. Bill Smith, an engineer, comes up with it, but it's Mikkel Harry that comes up with selling it with the black belt and the green belt. Really comes into prime when Jack Welch and Lawrence Bossidy make a bet at who can improve Six Sigma better. Jack Welch wins. Lean, with its 5 things and its 8 ways, it's a term coined by John Kravik as an MIT researcher when he's looking at Ono and Shingo's work with the Toyota production system, and the word comes out in James Womack's book, Lean Production, in 1990. Okay, I can breathe. Questions, comments, concerns? If I told any stories wrong, please feel free to email me. If you have any other stories you want included in there, that's good too. Okay, let me take a real quick sip.
Are you exhausted?
That's why God invented coffee. So section 3, building a Pecha Kucha. So here I'm going to kind of walk you through development process, talking about some of the different ways you can and can't do it. It kind of overlaps with some of the lessons learned and best practices. The first thing that you've got to do is pick a topic. Now this may be dictated if you're looking at doing it at a PK night, or if your company's organizing one, or your organization is organizing one. It may be kind of a topic given to you. But if it's one that you have the opportunity to choose yourself, make sure that you pick it accordingly, that you scope it properly. It can't be too large. In hindsight, the history quality, too large of a concept. Also, but it's got to be one that you've got interest in, that you have some passion about, that you're excited about. Okay? Obviously, I was excited about the history of quality. Told you I was a history geek. So make sure that you find the topic, and maybe if it's a topic that you personally don't, if you can find an interesting or new angle to it. Also, always with any good presentation, start with your audience. Begin to realize what level, what your audience is like, what the demographics are, what the seriousness is about it, what level of knowledge, how much jargon can you use, what are they going to be aware of, that sort of thing. Analyze your audience. I begin by using Post-it notes, or you can use note cards. You might want to use 3x3 method, where you basically take 3 main points with 3 subpoints. I tend to overthink stuff, so I usually throw a bunch of stuff out there. So kind of here's an example of what I might have. I lay out a bunch of topics, and then I start winnowing through them. I start eliminating some, and I start moving stuff around, kind of what makes sense to me. I really don't know how people function before Post-it notes. So that's the way I usually will tend to organize a Pecha Kucha. The first one I went to with the ISP conference, they actually came out with an Excel spreadsheet. So this is actually an example of it. This is actually the one that I did, which was kind of nice. So they outlaid 20 slides. What was the main point? Put some ideas of what slide images you might have, and then a script. In hindsight, the script was a little bit too scripty. It's very difficult to follow script word by word, so you got to kind of watch out for that. Then start deciding on your slide format. So is it the theme, color? I'm a big believer in having a consistent look and feel throughout a presentation. Are you going to just speak, or are you actually going to do a demonstration? There's some thoughts about that. Then as you kind of go through and you start kind of walking your way through this and start crafting and building this, you're going to realize some slides are too much. They have too much information. Some slides aren't long enough. You're not going to fill 20 seconds in them. So you got to kind of play around with what can I combine, what can I consolidate, what do I need to break out. Pay attention to your slide design. What background do you have? What's your color theme? What's your real estate? Again, take into account the audience and the size of the room. You got to want to make it readable. Color theme. I'm going to talk about the timer. I don't know if you noticed, I've got a little timer running along the bottom. And then also page number. It's good for reference to kind of give you a gauge as to where you are, though you will be practicing this so much, you'll pretty much know it. I'm a big also believer in a consistent transition between slides. So you go to animations, you pick out what you want, and then you set the timer for 20 seconds. Also put mouse click, because sometimes you might get done early and you want to advance, so you hit the space button. It happens. And then you start searching around for graphics. You want to use text sparingly. If you notice the history quality had a little bit too much text. You want more graphics. Again, it's a little bit more attention grabbing. If you have trouble with graphics, if you get stuck on what graphics you want, I forgot them. We've got these great things at Amazon called imagery decks. It's a deck of cards with like 52 different pictures. So they're wonderful for kind of flipping through and coming through. If you're stuck on a concept, Google it. It's stuck in mud. You're stuck, and look at images, see what comes up. And then you start practicing. So you've got it all kind of crafted together, and now you start running through it. And this is where you're doing it while you're walking the dog, or while you're driving to work. Please don't have your laptop open doing this at work or driving. So you keep working on it, keep running through it, and you'll tweak it as you go along. Make it personal. Try to add additional stories. Try not to go overboard. My first presentation was this mythical thing about this old guy, and I actually went to Goodwill, bought a book, created a cover, scanned it. My wife thinks I'm a little crazy. So make it personal and accordingly. Also, the PK format, it's a bit unusual. You're up here for a really condensed time, but a lot of times it's one that allows you to connect with your audience. They're there for a reason. They're there to see that method. So love your audience. Try to connect with your audience and take them into account. Notes, whether to use them or not. This is a very difficult format to try to use handwritten notes. PowerPoint has got the presenter mode, which I've actually got running right now, which I'm cheating and looking at. So you may want to consider that. That is, it's a nice feature. But again, you're going to be practicing so much, you may or may not have to use it. Be prepared for audiences that turn hostile on you or want to start shouting questions in the middle of your PK. Obsolete equipment, old projectors, bad sound systems. Like any presentation, you have to be ready for the unusual. Delivery. Nice thing about PK is that if you stumble, you wait 20 seconds, the next slide pops up, and then you just kind of try to reset and catch up. If you fumble on a slide, drop that slide, just move on to the next. 20 seconds can seem incredibly fast or intolerably slow. So, any questions on building a PK? Yeah. It helps. I think at the PK nights they kind of announce that. But the A3 presentation I did, people started asking questions in the middle of it, and I'm just like, I'll answer it at the end. Shut up. Remember your question. So, but yeah. A low-cost place to get graphics. Actually, I'm going to talk about some resources. The nice thing is Google, and I'll talk about I worked at GE in the training department, and we had it drilled in our head not to use any copyrighted material. So you can go to Google, and then under Tools, you can search for royalty-free or use for commercial use. Yeah, Google Images, and then there's Tools. You click on that, and it brings down some menus and some options. And then I think it's called rights usage or usage rights or something like that. So you can actually search for royalty-free stuff. There's also a place, Creative Commons, I'm going to talk about here a little bit later on as well. So, or if you went to my cartoon session, you would know you just draw your own. So yeah.
Have you created any of these standalones, like using Microsoft Mix, the add-in that lets you actually record and package it together as a standalone product, like on your intranet?
I have not, but actually at work, we actually just finished a class where I had trainers from around the world narrate PowerPoints. We had them walk through the PowerPoints with just their headset microphones, record it, capture it, and convert it into video. So instead of trying to do camera captures and stuff like that. So I have not used Microsoft Mix. They've got another one out too that someone just told me about, and I looked at it, and it's sort of like OneNote for PowerPoint, where you bring in all different sources and everything. I can't remember what it is, but also some people will use Prezi. Has anyone used Prezi? Prezi is sort of like, imagine just like a huge whiteboard the size of this wall, and you can populate it with graphics and pictures and text, and then Prezi is just basically, it'll focus on one area and then move and then move and then move, so some people like it. Any other questions? Yes?
Do you feel that you need to prep your audience before doing a PK?
Yeah, and I'll actually talk about it. Depending on, so if you're at a PK night, people are understanding what they're going to be there. If you're doing this at a group or an organization for the first time, like the A3 presentation I did, I actually got up there and told them what I was going to do and prepped them for that, so they kind of understood. They still asked questions in the middle of it, morons. But yeah, if it's a new format to them, it's going to be kind of unfamiliar, so you kind of want to prep them. Any other questions, comments? Yes? Why do these? Because they're fun. No. She asked what the purpose of why you would use one of these and what the purpose is. Again, it's great, and I'm going to jump ahead. I'm going to get into some other stuff I'm already talking about. So at Amazon, we have something called 200 seconds of learning, which is basically 10 slides at 20 seconds each. And what we do is we do it around a central organization. So for example, I belong to this group called Engineering Excellence. We provide training throughout Amazon. And so I run the boot camp for software engineers. Someone else runs software or management training. Then we've got a learning management system. So we all got together and did this, and we had 5 presentations on different aspects of our organization, and we went and presented that. And it was nice because it gives you a quick overview of it. It gives exposure to what it is, and it gives it in a very condensed format. I mean, if they would have given us an hour, we would have used up an hour, we would have rambled on, and people would have fallen asleep. But with a short format like a PK, if you gather up, it's a good way to provide exposure or a brief introduction to a topic. Or to actually wrap up a project. If you just want to give highlights to a project, this would be good for that. So, yeah.
Have you ever seen the Quality Minute, Duran Institute?
The Quality Minute from the Duran Institute? No, I have not. I will have to look that up. So.
Basically, what you're doing video is a presentation.
Oh,
They run and you can ask questions.
there you go. Yeah, the big trend in learning nowadays is micro-learning. So everything's got to be in short, manageable, consumable bits. All right, for those damn millennials that just can't, your attention span is 2 minutes. So we got to accommodate them. All right, any other questions? All right. So section 4, we're going to talk about some variations. We already touched on some of them. And also, being a PhD geek, I pulled some academic studies, so some insight there we'll talk about. See, that's one of the examples where we went quick. So the variations, I've seen a lot of variations. I've seen people read poems, I've seen people do music. I've yet to see one do interpretive dance, but it would be hilarious. I saw one, it was one of my favorites actually. It was 2 people and they were like acting, and every 20 seconds the background changed to kind of suit the scene they were in. It was really interesting, really well done. So you can think of a lot of different things. The PK nights themselves will have lots of variations. So some might have a centralized theme that you all got to talk about. Some might be progressive, where one PK builds upon another. One PK night has slots for bands, so band gets up and does 6 minutes and 40 seconds. So some different variations. You can find out more at pechakucha.org. They also have a daily Pecha Kucha, so you can actually download an app and you can watch one of these, and they've got them on a variety of things. I'm a bit of a magic geek, and they actually just had one on Houdini, so that was kind of cool. So you can also find locations and other information about PKs there. So Ignite is a variation. Ignite is 20 slides for 15 seconds, so shorter, but it ends out right at 5 minutes. It's actually growing in popularity, so very similar to PK. They started here in Seattle. It spread to about 350 cities now. A lot of teams within companies, universities, governments have hosted the Ignite events. And actually the Ignite talks here in Seattle run more frequently than the PK nights. So you might have better luck actually attending or presenting at one of those. 200 seconds of learning, this is what I mentioned. This is what we do at, we got a group at Amazon that organizes these. So you get one title page where you're allowed to kind of come up and get settled in and introduce yourself. And 10 content slides, 20 seconds each. And then one final slide, again, no timer, where you're allowed to walk back. And we do about 5 or 6 presenters on a centralized topic. The Lessig method is from a Stanford law professor. He puts up a slide with just a single word or short quote or a photo, and he uses it for a springboard in his lecture. So he may put up a quote like this and start talking about it, and may stay up the whole lecture, or he may have several ones. The Takahashi method is just large print text. No photos, no graphics, it's just text up there. And it's just a way to spark conversation or discussion again. May or may not be used in a time setting. This one here says, I don't have PowerPoint. So he just uses that for discussion as to why not to use PowerPoint. Lightning talks is a term that actually predates Ignite and PK. It started in 1997. It's kind of an all-encompassing term for any of these fast-paced talks. So formats and times vary. It may be 5 to 10 minutes. It may be time slides. It may not. They may say you've got 10 minutes to talk, and you've got certain amounts of time. Data blitzes are, it's a type of lightning talk. It might, again, it's up to your imagination. It might be a 2-minute poster presentation, or it might be 5 minutes of presentation limited to 4 slides, but the slides aren't timed. So maybe you talk to one slide for all but 1 minute, okay? Speed geeking, it's like speed dating. It's actually, I've done this and it's really fun. So basically you've got like maybe 6 presenters here, and you have groups that rotate between the groups. So every 5 minutes you present, and then the groups get up and they move to the next presentation. The bad thing is the presenters got to continually present, so it can be wearing. With the advent of the apps on your phone, like for the ASQ conference here, stuff like this is diminishing, but the old school method, democracy, so everyone gets dots, and then you list the different sessions. So this is a good way to get feedback on what people liked, didn't like, who attended, things of that nature. So some studies, Bayer in 2011 found that Pecha Kucha presentations had a higher instructor ratings of eye contact, visuals, overall presentation qualities compared to standard PowerPoints. The use of graphics and the time conciseness actually helped the presentations. Conversely, a couple studies show that there's too much information in PKs, that it overloads the system, especially if you're putting graphics and text, like I'm doing here. It overloads some learners' channels. They feel they only have 2 channels, and so should simplify it. So thumbs down on the PK from that study. And then another study in 2012, they had students see a pre-recorded 5-minute PowerPoint and a 10-minute PowerPoint, and then a 5-minute PK, actually would have been an Ignite talk. And then they rated their presentations, and a week later they went back. And the retentions were about the same, but the PK actually had a higher satisfaction rate, that people remembered that, the presentation more, but the content kind of remained similar. So, questions on variations or studies? Has anyone done a type of variation of Data Blitz or Ignite Talk, or anyone did speed geeking? It's a great exercise if you've got like small quick demos, or if you've got different departments or teams that are trying to highlight certain stuff. So a fun thing to do. Okay. If no questions, we're going to get into our last section, talking about lessons learned, best practices, and resources. There we go. So again, practice, practice, practice. Don't script. Learn to be a little bit flexible. Again, because of the graphic nature, you've got a little bit more leeway because you're not reading from slides. You can get flustered, though, because of the timing issues. So again, practice really helps. Again, remind you, know your audience. I am originally from Wisconsin, so by state law, I am a Packer fan. However, I would be smart enough not to do PK on the history of the Packers in Chicago. Okay? Though we probably do have more fans down there than the Bears, given their play lately. The Bears. So again, remember your audience, always take into consideration your audience. The countdown timer, some people like it, some don't. I do. This layout for the template they've got is nice because I've got a very light timer going on the bottom. You may not even notice it. But they're real easy to do. You just make a box, you have a wipe transition, and you set it to 20, and it just counts itself down. And then you can adjust the transparency to kind of hide it on a slide somewhere. Fonts and images, I do a lot of PowerPoint presentations. I create a lot for training purposes and whatnot. And I'm a big fan on making sure that the fonts and images are consistent. You really want no more than 2 different types of fonts per presentation. You want to make sure that they're readable, that you're using font, you're not using the chiller font or some goofy font. So you want to make sure that's right. Copyrighted materials. Copyrighted material, do not use copyrighted material. Again, I'm a big believer in that. Even knockoff stuff, if you're doing silly Mickey Mouse stuff, Disney is especially. And again, you can go to tools on Google's image searches and find stuff on that. So you can find free stuff. Animation. I love animation on PowerPoint, and it's gotten more and more powerful over the years. However, it is possible to overdo it. This is distracting as heck. Okay? You're not paying attention to me right now. You're wondering when is this damn ball going to stop bouncing around. Okay? So you want to use it sparingly. You want to use it just maybe draw a little bit of attention, not overwhelming. Sound, I am not a big fan of using sound in PowerPoint because inevitably the speakers don't work. You can't get the volume right. There's feedback. It doesn't work. So unless it's just critical, I don't use sound. Plus, I don't know how sound in a PK format would work. Same with video. I imagine with Vines, the 6-second video clips, you might be able to find some cool applicable ones. Really hadn't thought about that too much. But overall, I think videos would be difficult to incorporate. And so I would shy away from them. Again, you've got sound issues as well. I've seen people actually do demonstrations. My first PK, I actually did a magic trick as part of the PK, which was stupid on my part. I was fortunate to be able to pull it off, but it was hectic, it was frantic, it deterred from the message. So doing any type of demonstration in a PK format, though I think a drill instruction would be cool, flipping rifles around with each slide. But they're very difficult, so I would shy away from demonstrations. The formatting, slide automatic advancing, that transition. I've got a simple just fade transition on all my slides. What you just saw was the different variations of it with different colors. It, again, is distracting. Simple, consistent. Again, your flow, that's where the key element, and when you first start doing this and you're laying out with the Post-it notes or the notes or the Excel spreadsheet, make sure it flows, that it's logical, and that also will help your delivery. If it makes sense, if all of a sudden you hit this outlier, this non sequitur in the middle of the topic, it'll mess you up. Okay? Again, as you practice, as you reiterate, always take into account, is the slide too long? Is it too short? Do I have to consolidate? If the slide is over 10 seconds, or over 20 seconds, depending on the format, consider breaking it into 2. Okay? Again, if you're new, or if you're presenting to a new audience, what we were just talking about, so if I've organized a PK event at a company and nobody's ever seen this before, it might take some time, first of all, to maybe get the word out what it is. It will pique people's interest, they'll want to see this, but then make sure that you tell them, hey, don't be asking questions, be respectful of the format. Also, pick a style according to you. Like I said, I'm a fan of the fast talking, grifter, con man, glib entertainer type person. That may not be you. If you're more soft spoken, you can actually have a nice slow pace at 20 seconds per slide. You just have to pace it accordingly. Some resources out there, the pechakucha.org site is wonderful. The Ignite, and it's ignitetalks.io. Google Ignite Talks and you'll come across it. But they've got a lot of good references, resources, examples if you want to find out. And then, of course, Google is your friend unless you're trying to hide personal data. Some other great resources. I'm a big believer in Toastmasters, not only for public speaking, but leadership aspects of it. I stumbled across a great site called Presentation Zen. It's really about making simplistic presentations. The Moth Storytelling is a monthly event around the world, and Creative Commons. It's a good source for royalty-free network. So we talked a lot. We had 5 sections. We did an intro. I gave my history of quality PK. We walked through how to build a PK, taught you some variations, and this section we're wrapping up with lessons learned and best practices. So we told you what a PK was and its format of 20 seconds at 20 slides. When it might be used, it's good for exposure, for introductions, not for in-depth teaching. We went over pros and cons, we identified best practices, and walked you through developing, delivering all of that. And with that, questions, comments, or concerns? Yeah. Good catch, yes. That's copyrighted probably.
How do you go, I want, say I want to use it, how would I go about using it?
How would you go about using it?
Yeah, who do I go to say the copyright?
Well, now, that's an interesting, because this is a nonprofit conference, there's something called the Fair Use Doctrine. So for conferences, nonprofits, educational settings, you can actually use copyrighted material as part of the discussion. It's called Fair Use Doctrine. If you're a for-profit organization, such GE or Amazon, we're developing training. If I were to have a slide in there with copyrighted material, that would be a potential lawsuit. Actually, I don't know. We just always avoid it. I know at some of the graphic artists I work with at GE, there is a clearinghouse for copyrighted material that you can go through to determine who owns it and what you have to pay, but I don't know anything more about that. I'd have to research it or Google it. Sorry. Yes? Do people want copies of your slides? It varies. Oddly enough, because it's PowerPoint, people always want a copy of your slides. They're just like, oh, I want your slide deck. And I'm like, well, it's all graphics, so it doesn't really make sense. Depending if you've populated, it was funny because after I got this proposal to present this was accepted, the format for the conference, I think, was like 50 slides, and I've got 100. And I said, well, and they're timed out, so I was worried about the uploading and the transference and with the timing stay and everything like that. And so I put it all together, I sent it off, and you have to go through reviews before the conference here, so they make sure that you're not way off base. And so the guy came back and said, I don't understand any of this. And I'm like, well, so we emailed back and forth, and so finally I went and I finally put instructor notes in. So this presentation, besides my typos in the notes, might have some benefits, but for the majority of them, because it's just all graphic-based, I don't see the value in it, and I personally wouldn't. But again, it's PowerPoint, and people always ask you for slides. It's an odd thing. Yeah? No, I've seen duos do it. So some of the more interesting ones, I mentioned the poem, not the poem, but the reading that was at the ISPI conference, where they had like this little script and the background changed in variation with the script. Actually, one of the better ones at our 200 Seconds of Learning, we've got 2 women that organize our conferences, and they got up and they did a duo as well. They had, it was kind of like a Q&A session. It was really kind of cute. They would have the question pop up, and one would read it, and the other one would answer it. And so it was a nice back and forth. I haven't seen more than 2 people though. I think that would start getting complex if you had more than 2 people trying to do it, but it could. Yeah. So if I developed it, oops, sorry about that. So if I were to give my history of quality PK to somebody else, could they deliver it? It would be difficult. I mean, they could probably do it, but I think the PK is a very individualized format. It's a very personal format because you do have to go through so many reiterations to develop it that it almost becomes second nature, and you kind of know the ins and outs. And if you're really, really prepared, as opposed to me up here today, if you're really prepared for it, it's almost second nature as to what you're talking about. So yeah, you could, but what would happen, I think, if I gave my history of quality PK to you, you would probably take it and modify it to the point where it would become yours. But yeah, I would see it as individual. Any other questions? Yes? Do I think talking quickly is I do personally, yes, but that's just me. I drink a lot of coffee. I actually had a speech impediment as a child where I talked too fast, and I had to go to speech therapy. The kids called me motor mouth. It was sad. But yeah, my mind works. My mouth can't keep up with it. That's not always good. I actually should slow down a lot more. But 20 seconds is deceiving. You think 20 seconds per slide, my God, I'm not going to be able to get it done then. But if you pace it out right, and if you scope the topic properly, you can go at a nice leisurely pace. I've seen people get up there and not to stereotype or anything like that, but my favorite is like people from the South. And they get up there and, hey, how y'all doing? And today we're going to talk about, and they just have a sing-song voice that they roll right through it, and they do it at a nice leisurely pace. So depending on your topic and how you've got it paced, the speed of your talking is it's determined by you and your character and your personality. So, yes?
So our 5 minutes is awesome at work is 8 slides, 30 seconds, and then our COO throws in an unknown slide at the end. So you have to use another 30 seconds to slide.
So 8 slides, 30 seconds, and then an unknown slide for another 30 seconds. Wow. I have not. Wow. That's sort of like, well, see, again, table topics at if you go to Toastmasters, any Toastmasters in here? Yeah, Toastmasters is table topics. So every meeting, basically you have some unknown topic or variety of topics, and you may be asked to give a 2-minute speech on. So that would be good preparation for that. But does he do it in conjunction with your slides, or is it just, you don't know? Okay.
So there starts to be a theme to that last slide that he adds in. So, and then you have to guess what his theme is.
Wow. Does he wear a lot of leather too, or just? I'm sorry. Personally, I don't want to know about it. All right. Yes.
You have to preempt your audience if they haven't heard it the first time, that to listen. You got to listen and you got to pay attention.
Yeah, you do. And you have to, the question is, you have to prep your audience. And if it is the first time, yes, you have to do it. Again, they're not used to the format. I mean, they catch on relatively quickly after a few slides. They realize kind of what's going on with or without an explanation. What's more important, though, if you're doing this for a team event, or you decided, hey, I'm gonna be goofy at a company function, and I'm gonna give my presentation in a Pecha Kucha format. Make sure you get with the host or who's ever emceeing the event, because with the A3 format I did, so I got it all together. It was 20 slides, timed out each, and he took my first slide and he took the timing off, so he thought it was my introduction slide. So fortunately, I got there before the session, and I was testing it and realized there was no time to my slide. And he's like, well, you wanted an introduction. I'm like, yeah, but that is my introduction. So we duplicated the slide and, jury-rigged it really quick like that. But yeah, not only do you have to prep the audience sometimes, but if it's a new host or it's a new format for that organization, you've got to prep the other people as well. Yeah. So there are PK nights. What PKs have I seen in a business setting that have worked really well? The 200 seconds of learning that we do at Amazon, I absolutely love. I think it's, because Amazon is a very peculiar place in the fact that we empower teams just to go and do stuff. You go, whatever you need, whatever you want, you go and do. So we got people working on stuff all over the place, so you have no idea what's going on. So it's a great format to just get together and say, hey, this is it. You got 200 seconds of learning. You can go. It takes half an hour. and you get kind of a download, instant download of what that team is doing. So it's again, and then if you want to know more, then you know who to go talk to. So in that instance, it's really good. I've seen them done at the conference, at the ISPI conference. They actually had a PK over lunch. So it's kind of it's a way to introduce topics that over a lunch period, over a variety of things. So if you're introducing new things, I think this would be a dynamic format for a quick session debrief. I mean, you just finished up a process improvement event, you know, why sit there and lumber on and on and on? Tell the team you've got 20 slides at 20 seconds. What are your key points? You know, I think it would be ideal. I haven't done that yet, but I will someday. Any questions, comments? We're losing people. Well, if there are no more questions, comments, if you do think of anything else, please, craigplain@gmail.com. Appreciate it. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Craig. Enjoyed it
Thank
very
you.
much. Everybody be sure and fill out your online evaluation, and don't miss the closing session at 10:45.